Hello everyone, Foxing here. I'd like to apologize to everyone about my last video. It was pretty bad. Um, so I'm just making this new one, which will, be more informative and sound less ragey and less opinionated rather than, actually giving you guys the facts. So let's just, get into it. This will be going over the very basics of the new marks, as well as talents and the advanced stuff while I'm talking about the talents because they're kind of interchangeable. Or not really interchangeable, rather. And then after we're done talking about all that stuff, then I'll give my actual opinion rather than information about everything. Okay, so marks at the very, very core right now. The goal of it is to apply a debuff called Mark Target to the target, and you do that by hitting Arcane Shot or Multi-Shot, and then that'll trigger Mark Shot, and you want to do that 3 times to get 3 stacks, and that makes your hardest hitting spell, Aim Shot, do even more damage, and that is the basics of marks right now. Talent wise, I want to go over the 3 talents in the tier, go over what they do, and then I'll explain to you why these are good and why these are bad, because they're in the tier that they are. Black Arrow. It's a shadow dot, and you can stack it up 3 times. That's all. It doesn't proc lock and load anymore. That's a separate talent. Steady Focus, using Arcane Shot twice in a row, increases your focus regen by 50% for 10 seconds. True Aim. Every time you hit something, it'll get 2% more damage on it, stacking up to 40%. If you hit something else, all those stacks are reset. Now, the reason why I said in the previous video that Steady Focus is going to be basically the only one we're really able to use is because True Aim is too narrow. You can only use it on like a 1 target fight, literally. Because if you hit anything else, it resets. Steady Focus, on the other hand, you can use on, literally anything. And Black Arrow is, really bad because it won't compare to hitting 40% harder, and you can't really build up the damage with this. Unless they buff it to where it's like a better single target thing, then it really doesn't have a place here, because getting more focus regen is a lot more important than just doing, 1 spell worth of damage extra, or 3 if you have 3 stacks going. And in a single target, it's not going to be better than hitting 40% harder. Now, in the future, because after I've done some raid testing for real, your focus regen right now is very, very high. So Steady Focus might just be gone because you won't need the focus anymore, making Black Arrow, fine to use again. But then you have to really weigh it against how long or how much uptime you can have of True Aim on some fights that aren't single target, because 40% is a pretty big margin. So anyway, that's my assessment of that. The next tier is Post Haste. When you disengage, it clears you all movement, gives you 60% movement speed for 8 seconds. Bar Strider, whenever you crit, it'll reduce the cooldown, or not whenever you crit, it has a chance to reduce the cooldown of disengage by 10% whenever you crit. That's important. And Dash, the duration of Aspect of the Cheetah is increased by 3 seconds. Aspect of the Cheetah is now a 3-minute cooldown, increasing your movement speed by 90% for 3 seconds, and then 30% for another 9. The reason Far Strider, I said, it's important that it has a chance to reduce, is because you can pair this up with kill flip, which we'll go over later. Piercing shots, you simply do 30% more damage if you crit. Simple as that. Exotic munitions, fire ammo, you deal AoE damage every time you auto attack. Poison ammo, you deal a dot every time you auto. Frozen ammo, slowly auto. And broadside, aim shots will now hit all vulnerable targets for 9,000 damage. That doesn't really mean anything, can be scaled differently. Tooltips, always useful. Now, vulnerable targets means anything that's been hit by marked shot. This can be good for AoE, or for cleaving, but not good for AoE. Piercing shots in this tier is the only option because it's way too strong compared to the others. 30% damage on crits, which, I mean, you'll be, like, even in the early gear, like, I mean, I just remade, you know, this tune, and it's got 31% already. So that's, you know, already a 10% flat damage increase if you do, you know, the basic maths. And exotic munitions simply doesn't compare to this, as well as, you know, broadside. You can hit, you know, extra targets with your aim shot, but it's not going to be doing 30% extra damage if you crit with it, on top of our mastery, which increases our critical damage, which I actually forgot to go over. Basically, our mastery now is just the same as sniper training, except for you don't need to be standing still. And haste increases, you know, our attack speed and focus regen, which is, you know, fine, but our focus regen now is very high compared to 5. And it's so high that you can almost not run out of focus during heroism, and your cooldown true shot, which increases your haste by 40%. You will literally be spamming aim shot during, like, a pull, not because it, you know, not because you have the focus to do it, but because you can't get rid of that focus, and you need an extreme focus dump. Which, I mean, they, in my opinion, I know I said I didn't, you know, want to do this right now, but because we're still going over the basics, in my opinion, it's too much. Anyway, binding shot, you know, it's a stun. Wyvern sting is a CC. And camouflage, you know, 2% heal. And your stealth. But the important thing about camouflage now is the first attack you deal from camouflage will do 10% extra damage. From a, you know, rating standpoint, this is the only one you can really choose, unless the fight, like, demands a crazy amount of CC, or, you know, some dungeons could use binding shot, but I don't really think that's gonna happen, because, you know, 10% on your wind burst essentially is, you know, a pretty big deal. Light them up. Targets hit by your flare. Take 10% extra damage from everything. Heightened vulnerability. When marked shot hits something after you use this, it'll apply 3 stacks. That means you can start aim shotting immediately if you have this one, whenever you on the pole or when you're target switching. Now, headshot, I wish this wasn't, like, so much damage to the point of, you know, not being able to actually test any of this stuff, because right now it's, you know, it's just doing too much damage. Like, I mean, on the recent testing, like on Scorpion, If you had 6 Marks Hunters, you could global the spawn of all the ads, making the fight, completely pointless to test. So that's how that's working. But the actual mechanics of it is 20 to 100 focus, 10-second cooldown. It will hit all the things in between you and the target for a set amount of damage for how much focus you use, which could be really good for like focus management later on. But as it stands right now, it's the only thing to, use just because it does so much damage. And when you need marked shots on things, well, for one, marked shot isn't actually applying on some fights and places, so you can't really use this because, hey, marked shot doesn't apply or won't proc at all. And light 'em up will probably be good for AoE in some circumstances when you need like sustained AoE for like 6 seconds or so. But at the same time, headshot could still beat it out quite a bit because it's very large burst for AoE. And it's not supposed to be hitting your main target as far as I know. That's what the tooltip reads. But it does hit the main target as well for quite a lot. So take from that what you will. Murder of Crows, it's dot, physical dot that does damage over 15 seconds. If it kills the target, the attack is reset. Barrage, mother of pulling, just, it's everything in front of you. And volley, I'm sure we've all missed volley so much. It's hard to explain what volley is. I mean, it's an AoE that you target on the ground. And here, I'll just show you. Yeah, so volley doesn't do much damage. I mean, it's kind of like Blizzard or like Rain of Fire, except for it does, I mean, almost 0 damage. So it needs to be scaled up a bit. But even if it was scaled up, I don't think it would be beating out Barrage, because Barrage is just too good. It hits everything, and you don't really consistently AoE like that, because if you were consistently AoEing, pardon me, if you were consistently AoEing, you'd just be using, multi-shot back to back and still do more damage than volley would probably do. So that's how that tier is working. Barrage is the only option, of course. Now, Dark Ranger, thank you to the person who enlightened me on, it's not just the Sylvanas passive. Whenever you hit something, little pets will start spawning. Like that one there. And sometimes it'll, there will be so many pets that you can't really distinguish if you're a Mark Hunter or not. Compared to like Beast Mastery or something. But, lore-wise this works out. In the previous video I was kinda, sounding like a turbo nerd. Thinking, it's just a Sylvanas passive because, it's, Dark Ranger, etc., etc. But, it works out. It's fine. Kill Flip, paired with Forest Rider, can be really good. For 8 seconds after disengaging, you deal 50% more damage. So if you can get disengage down to an 8-second cooldown from critting, which is full probably six procs. Then you can keep this buff up for, you know, the whole fight, which will, you know, be an insane damage increase later on. And I really like how it works, you know, mechanically and stuff. Like, it's one of the best. You know, you have proper interaction. But I'll just get into the opinions later. Lock and load is separate from, you know, Black Arrow now. And it procs from your auto attacks, not crits or anything, just 5% when you auto. Makes your aim shot crit and cost no focus. If you were in the middle of casting aim shot, it'll become instant as well. And take up that proc, which is a bit annoying, but, you know, what are you gonna do? Now, again, to reiterate that, you know, this is my opinion that has been done over, you know, multiple tunes of testing, you know, raid testing, dungeons, you know, years of raiding experience as well, you know, logs, you know, from the raiding and stuff. So yeah, there needs to be a lot of stuff that needs to change with this, in my opinion. That's actual, you know, opinion. It could stay the same. There could be loads of people who really like the new marks, and, you know, that's fine. But from my standpoint, it has a lot of flaws to it. It doesn't really feel like a marks hunter. It's less about, you know, being a hunter, or rather being like a marks hunter. You're not just shooting things, I don't know. You're certainly not the sniper, and you're certainly not the, you know, poison-based lone man, or lone wolf, essentially, as, you know, survival was, and this is just a weird mix of the two. And, you know, I mean, you can use Black Arrow and Lock and Load, and I guess piercing shots for like a dot or whatever, but it doesn't really feel, you know, good to play. It's way too fast in focus regeneration, so you don't really have much time to really, you know, plan out what you're doing. It's just, you know, quick fire in succession, like, oh, you know, I mean, I've been playing this for a couple weeks, and probably have like 20 hours on it worth of testing, and I'm still running into being capped on focus, which is something that's pretty impressive to do, honestly. And it's not just because I'm missing add-ons that help me, you know, manage things. It's like, it's just too much. And with steady focus, it's, unless you're like dumping a crazy amount of focus just all the time, steady focus is just way too much focus regen. And when you get into later gear, like even just a little bit of haste, it's so much regen, like, already in the first tier. Like, not even the first tier of raiding, it's dungeon loot. It's just, it needs to be slowed down a bit, which is a weird thing for me to say, honestly. But for marks, or, you know, the ranged hunter right now, it needs to be slowed down to where it feels like a hunter again, instead of, you know, a rogue, basically. Now, this is my opinion, of course. However, it is backed with, you know, lots and lots of testing right now. And honestly, I would like to see some changes to things that would that benefit the class or spec as a whole, and not just, feel and stuff. Because, I mean, at the core, it's already, broken. Essentially, it doesn't work. Your marked target thing, your passive seek vulnerabilities, procs way too often, or because of whatever they added recently, it procs, like if you use what's it called now? True shot. That's supposed to be 100% chance to do that, and sometimes it'll literally turn off your ability to mark something, which can be frustrating when you're trying to test something properly, and not just using headshot because herpa derpa, there's a 2 million crit all of a sudden. And after all of this testing, there's it's still cookie cutter. Like, I mean, in WoD, Warlords of Draenor, they wanted to open up the talents. In Legion, they wanted to make some talents and choices for you to change. But for right now, it's very cookie cutter. Like, there's the build you have for when you don't have stats, and then there's the build for when you finally get stats, and then that's it, really. And, you can change, Black Arrow and Steady Focus when you get to that point, or you can, use Terrain for single target. And that's about the extent of what you change. I mean, they can buff these things to make, like, Black Arrow, like, better for single target. But then, it's a flat damage increase versus True Aim, which is a flat damage increase. One is active, one is passive. And they, kind of do the same thing, except for Black Arrow is only useful when you have enough haste to not use Steady Focus. Which, by the way, as much as I'm saying, like, oh, it's too fast, there's too much regen, when you're AoEing, you'll be fine for, dumping your focus. Which is another point I kind of want to go over right now, is the spec doesn't really have any single target, opportunities or decisions to be made. It's, do I have enough focus? Yeah. Is my marked shots up? Of course. But it's when, you start using multi-shot and, like, is this better to use it on, the 2 targets now, or the 1 target with the buffed, the buffed aim shot? Is that better? Or, like, when it gets to 3 targets, is it better? And, broadside doesn't do extra damage to vulnerable targets. Even though it's an aim shot based damage, let's say, you have your 3 targets here, and they're all vulnerable. Broadside is, it would hit all of them for its, 9,000-ish damage. But it wouldn't do any more if they had 3 stacks of the thing, which is really bad, to say the least. Because I actually want this to be, the cleave talent, essentially. I like that they have these options for, changing it up, changing how you play. But the problem is they're either, not balanced properly, or the other ones are too strong. And, I mean, again, it's alpha, it could change at any point, but, we've been through a couple iterations now, and nothing's changed. So it's kind of worrying that it's like, yeah, it's not actually going to change. So, this is, backed by a couple patches of, well, a couple changes. And Like when I heard that they were like updating marks for this patch specifically on the alpha, I was like, all right, we're gonna get some new stuff, because that thing before was pretty bad. And then it's just like marks change. The only thing is post haste frees you from movement and parrying stuff. It's like, oh well. I guess that's good for me because I can talk about it more, I guess. But that's bad for them thinking that Marks is fine the way it is, because trust me, it's not. It has, at the core, it's, for single target, it's dead boring. And for AoE, there's too many decisions to be made, and that's not good. For like them having this weird, trying to slow stuff down and make it easier for people, Marks is definitely not doing that for AoE. Or rather, going from, single target to cleave to AoE and going back and forth to them. It can be, to properly do that takes quite a lot of practice. With this iteration anyway, as of, February 2016. And, doing that, you can change your spells, like Broadside, Heightened Vulnerability, Murder of Crows to a degree, which, again, it doesn't do enough damage compared to Barrage, and Volley's just a joke. But there's also, like Exotic Munitions has great potential for being really good on some things, versus, Piercing Shot, and etc., etc. But, in my opinion, Exotic Munitions needs to work with your spells. There's no way that they're gonna make this thing, work. It's too clunky. All it does is work with your auto attacks, and not your spells. So the AoE component is completely lost. You could have this, work with Barrage, and it would do very well with the incendiary ammo, instead of just, oh hey, now if you crit with Barrage it does 30% more damage. And Broadside, it's a cleave thing, so you'd want to be using it on cleave. And seeing Lock and Load here, it doesn't have any interaction. It's just a passive that kind of just happens. It doesn't have any opportunity to be like, oh yeah, you can make Lock and Load, proc more, or it's kind of a really really weak passive compared to, even Dark Ranger is better than Lock and Load right now, which is saying something, because I mean, one is, and it's just basically a flat damage versus, actively changing how you play. And Kill Flip is like probably one of the best things they've done mechanically for WoW in quite a long time. Despite my, not liking it, because it's on disengage. That's basically the only reason why I don't like it, is because it's on disengage. Your movement spells should not be, made into a damage buff. That's one of the main reasons I had a problem with Mistweavers, because they had to use Chi Torpedo. It's, forcing movement and position for damage, which, in raid environments and in dungeons, you can't really just be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna disengage right now. Because what if you're on, like, a fight like Tyrant? If you disengage, you can almost kill yourself if that first phase debuff is high enough. And, like, if it's on progression, you simply can't use that. And it's not like it's just like a fight-to-fight basis thing. Because, I mean, nearly every fight has something like that, where you need that movement. And, it's like, saying, like, hey, mages can get a, 50% bonus after blinking, mages wouldn't be happy about that. And light 'em up, if these two were flipped, I wouldn't be, too upset about it, because, it's, basically just, flare. And, flare lasts longer now, by the way. Lasts 20 seconds instead of 10. As far as I know, it's longer now. Shows you how much I've been using flare. um, but yeah, like, if it was just like flare, things take 30% extra damage now. Or 25, whatever, makes it even with the other two, then it would be completely fine. Because, it's no different from, like, prismatic crystal or defile, or, something like that. But, again, like, you'd have to have a way to, reduce the cooldown of it, so it isn't like, oh hey, if something moves, you're, completely lost, so that's, unable to use that one. I mean, mages run into that all the time, except for mages are, so overpowered right now that, like, hey, if you move it away from the crystals, you're probably gonna be kicked as a tank. But back to exotic munitions. The poisoned ammo would probably serve better as like a 10% damage thing, like a weaker version of piercing shots, but just a flat 10% of damage if you do as a poison, instead of, just crits. And frozen ammo, it you know it doesn't really have a place besides PvP, because it's only slowing the one target, which we'll be getting anyway from marked shot and stuff, so it's passively doing that regardless. And like, that's the only use this one has, if it's just from auto attacks, because it's way too weak. They could scale it up and be like, oh well, now it's, the mother of all, Jesus, it's doing so much damage now. But, like, that just means the other ones become completely moot at that point. So there's no reason for them to scale it up. And even if it is, working with spells now, then, the other ones aren't going to lose their presence, because, incendiary ammo, things still need to be stacked very, very tightly. 8 yards is not big. And, poison ammo, if it's just a 10% damage increase, piercing shots, later on, will still outperform it. And exotic munitions would be more consistent in that it's just a 10% damage instead of, 30%. Like, because right now, again, 30% crit, you're critting 30% of the time, and you're doing 30% extra damage. It's, roughly 10% extra damage, but it's less consistent. And I'm sure by, like, the first tier will be, 40% or so. So, it works out, for damage increase, but it's not as consistent. So that's, there's still, room for, like, AoE and exchanging them on some things, like cleaving and stuff. And broadside just doesn't work. Because again, it needs to do more damage on vulnerable targets. There's no lying about that. It simply needs to do more damage. Forgot I was in queue. My bad. Yeah, anyway, broadside. If you pair this up with, like, lock and load, then you can, like, when you're in the middle of, like, cleaving with using multi-shot and marked shot, then you can, get some of the things to do, some cleave, because it's free instant stuff, so it's fine. it can be added into your cleave slash AoE rotation somewhat. But, I mean, lock and load's too weak as well. It's, compared to, kill flip even right now, it's not, it's not doing anything. I mean, lock and load should probably just be tied with Black Arrow again. And, this is my opinion. But, yeah, like, it just doesn't proc enough. And the proc is so weak right now that there's really no reason to choose it, because Dark Ranger does more damage than Lock and Load does over the course of a fight. And kill flip, you can, like, kill flip, headshot, and, it's like, oh yeah, well, 2 million crit, because, that's how much it's doing right now. So, it's just like pairing up, high burst with, because that's just all that you can do right now. You can't properly test anything, because headshot just does too much damage. I mean, like on one pull it was doing like 40 to 50% of my damage, or like something crazy like that. That's, one spell. And, we're not an arcane mage doing, pressing one button and doing all the damage. We have other spells that we should be using, but we're, not. Now, to take us back to basics, something like on the pole, Marks is looking for a single target anyway. It's looking like something like this. You'll be in camouflage, and then you'll be precasting, wind burst into a headshot. Then you'll be getting steady focus back up, trying to get your marks. Now, you would be using True Shot on the pole, but I don't want to use it here because it could turn off our marked things. Now, after you have your 3 stacks there, you'll be using Aim Shot whenever you have focus available. And whenever your Marked Shot procs, you'll be using that as well. And it will only take precedence over Aim Shot when you don't, or like when your marked thing is about to run out, which it very rarely does. Now, the only reason I'm using Headshot right now is just because I'm used to using it, and simply because it does a ton of damage. You probably won't actually be using it. So, take this with a grain of salt. So that's what, single target is looking like. Now, for AoE, I can't really show you here, and there isn't really any dummies that are, clumped together to show you that. Because, True Shot Lodge, for some reason you can't shoot the target things. But anyway, you'd be using multi-shot and arc shot as often as you could. And you'd be using arcane shot to keep steady focus up. Simple as that. So just imagine that there's, things around the target that I'm hitting. You'll get your steady focus up, and then you'll multi-shot and mark shot. Get your steady focus, multi-shot, mark shot, multi-shot, mark shot. Really, really simple for AoE. Now, I'm pretty sure I went over a couple things multiple times. Apologies for that. But just wanted to make sure to get, everything in, because last video I left out quite a bit of stuff, which was, bad for me and for anyone who watched it. Now, I could have, had some dungeon video and, the raid testing thing, but there was a bug with the raid testing that, gave people like 5 FPS instead of, like 90 or so. So it looked like a terrible thing. And you could only really get rid of it if you like relogged and stuff, so it was really annoying. But anyway, the reason I didn't do that for this video is because, I want people just to like tab out and listen to me and, maybe just tab in or look at the thing and be like, oh, okay. So that's the reason I don't have any, like, massive footage for any of the stuff I'm really talking about. And, there's other people who have, better looking, graphics than, this computer and stuff. So, if you want me to, include footage of what I'm talking about from, like, dungeons and stuff, then, just leave a comment or something. But, anyway, my overall opinion of the Marks Hunter right now is it really needs to stress its difference in playstyle from not having marked shot or marked target on something versus just simply ignoring it because it's not a big enough change to really warrant anything. And when you do need it up, it's already been there for quite a while. On top of all of this, some of the talents need to be buffed by quite a substantial amount. They need to be changed, in my opinion, of course, to where, they actually, do something. Like, for instance, lock and load should probably, be a guaranteed crit or something like that. So it's not just, a low chance for this, shitty proc, which is what it is. It's a very terrible proc compared to the other two talents. And I know I'm gonna get some hate for this, but it needs to be slower in its focus regen, because right now with steady focus it's too much. Like, I mean, you can reduce the cost of some of these things, like volley costs too much, but like there isn't enough room for you to actually be regenning. It's just all passive. Like, when you need focus, you've got focus, unless you're using, aim shot. Otherwise, you're swimming in focus. You could say you're a very focused person. Bad puns aside, it does need to be lowered just a bit, because, like with cooldowns and heroism up, which is, like, oh, it's heroism, but it's too much. It's like, you should never be, consistently capping your focus 100% of the time during cooldowns. There isn't any point when testing this that I thought, this is fun. It's very taxing on you to consistently be making these choices on a split second to, to optimize your damage. Now, not everyone's gonna be, caring about their damage, but if it's the goal of the spec, then, you're gonna be optimizing it if that's the goal, which, it's a bit elitist to say it, but, everyone should be, in some form or another, wanting to, be at the best that they can, and the way you do that right now is very, very dull and boring to do until you get to, like AoE and cleave, and, and switching between them, which, does happen, quite a bit. However, Marks has always been the single target spec. It's never been the cleave or the AoE spec, and that's basically all it's really got going for it right now. As of right now, it's not fun for me, at least. It's too fast in the sense of you don't have any reprisal of, like, yeah, I can, you know, calm down for a bit. It's always just bam, 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 no breaks. No breaks at all. Like, even when you're casting Barrage, it's so quickly done that you don't really get any time to think about anything. It's all instant, or you know, it's just like, oh no, my focus is capped again. That's, you know, like one of the worst things you can do as a hunter is like see that your focus is capped. And another thing is, it doesn't really feel like a marks hunter or a survival hunter. It doesn't even feel like a mix of them. It just feels just so like I'm playing a rogue more than a hunter. And on the feel department of like how it actually feels when you're using Dark Ranger, you know, lore wise, it works, you know, etc. Again, thank you to the person who, you know, said, you know, that's actually a thing, instead of, you know, just, oh hey, Sylvanas. You know, again, sorry for, you know, saying that again, but there, like, it procs too much, and you know, like when, you know, it's nice for like soloing stuff because it taunts stuff, but it doesn't proc enough to like actually be useful, and they last too short, as well as, you know, I think they die in like 3 hits from like just questing mobs, so that's a thing, I guess. The major thing about kill flip is, yeah, mechanically with Far Strider and um, the artifact weapon here with Bullseye will give you 100% crit for, you know, your pseudo execute instead of kill shot now. It'll really, you know, work nicely together. You know, it's multiple layers of talents and progression that, you know, really make it come together to where it's like, yes, I feel like this is really, really good, you know, because you have more uptime on your kill flip, and you're just like, oh, you know, I really felt that, you know, because I was, you know, doing this, I used like etc, that, you know, my uptime on kill flip was a lot better, which is basically that's the only thing that really feels nice about the spec in terms of like progression and stuff. It's the only one that you will actually feel a difference when you're getting stronger, because, or stronger, you know, you're getting more stats. You know, more than just changing steady focus to Black Arrow. As soon as you hit a haste break point, you will, you know, you'll have more uptime on kill flip, which is something that shouldn't be like that, essentially, because it's a talent, not a core aspect of, you know, of the spec. It's just a talent, but it's the only one that you'll really be progressing towards. Now, I'm not saying get rid of it, but you could, I don't know, change it just a little bit. You know, change it off of disengage for one. That's my opinion of it, anyway. I would like to see that. Yeah, it's fine if you don't, though. But the other two things, just they need some progression, like lock and load just being an auto attack 5%. Not only is this boring for, you know, boring and lazy in design of this, is just, you know, it's such a low proc chance. Nothing about it changes ever, besides, you know, maybe haste and like, oh, because you're auto attacking faster. It doesn't even scale from like your spells. It's just auto attacks, and the proc itself is weak, so it needs to be, you know, tweaked and changed a lot. And Dark Ranger, you know, it's fine for people who like it, but, you know, again, there needs to be some consistency there. You know, sometimes you get one mob every 30 seconds, and sometimes you get 8 mobs in, you know, every auto attack. Which is also kind of funny, because this one actually procs from your spells rather than, you know, just your auto attacks, and lock and load is the one that, you know, gets completely screwed over, basically. So this has been my feedback, overview, preview, whatever video. Hopefully you like it more than my previous video. I hope to, you know, differentiate information from opinion and, you know, fact, etc. So, and, you know, again, very sorry to people who saw the previous video. I won't be sounding like a raging turbo nerd anymore in any video. I must have been drunk or something when I made that. So anyway, have a good day. Peace.